IlluviTalks time. What's up, everybody? Andrew Wall here with Illuvium, and I'm excited to bring IlluviTalks into video format into 2022. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the vision for Web3 Gaming. Are we going to have an interoperable metaverse? Are VR and AR ever going to actually happen and be a thing? Will AI transform the gaming industry and our experiences on the internet? Ethereum versus Solana versus Cardano. We're going to take a look at their best games, their best infrastructure, and assess whether they're good or not and whether they're worth your time. You're going to learn something new in this episode. I guarantee it. And I've got an expert stacked panel of guests here with me today, including this man right here, Volkin, content creator, joining me on the show today. Volkin, how you doing? It's like 2:30 a.m. where you're at. Are you alive?
Yep, I'm all good, dude. Just an early start to the day, so I can chill for as long as you want. We can get into it. I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. Also on the panel, I've got a friend of mine, colleague, Nick Black, cryptocurrency and digital asset consultant and manager. He actually helped me get into crypto and pushed me the right direction. And now he's working in the financial publishing industry, and he's now sort of a crypto celebrity. Here he is, Nick Black. How you doing, buddy?
Good. There's no crypto celebrities. We're just different degrees of losers. Just some of us have more money.
I love it. Yep. That's his personality, everybody. That's why I brought him in. He'll say it exactly how it is. He's the on-air host for Money Morning Live, a show that some of my favorite colleagues actually produce along with him. So really good show, Money Morning Live. Also on the show, it's so stacked over here because we've got TSG in the house. TSG is a content creator. Welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? I'm excited to be here. I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're gonna have today. So appreciate you having me on, man. What's up, guys?
I'm very excited as well. We've got a stacked agenda that we need to cover. So many amazing topics, including Cardano games, Solana games, Ethereum games, interoperable metaverse, Web3 infrastructure, VR, AR, AI in gaming. Everything needs to be covered today. Every single thing, but really quick. Nothing we say is financial advice on this show. It's our opinions. We're going to keep it real with you. We're going to try to educate you, but you need to do your own research. And perhaps watching this episode is a part of that research, but certainly we are not trying to convince you to buy anything or another thing. Please be smart and understand we are just internet guys that are sharing our opinion. And it's really important that you go to illuvium.io/illuvatars. And today you can build an Illuvitar. It's a cool NFT for Illuvium. I need to shill that because it's literally my job. Great. Let's go into the topics at
Wait,
hand
Andrew,
today.
I got a question.
Yes.
If you're
What's your
building
question?
an Illuvitar and you do it wrong, are you an Illuvitard?
You are not the only person to make that joke. So many people I know have made that joke privately, and you're the only one that has the balls to make it publicly.
Oh man,
it sounds like you're not familiar with Illuvitars. Here, watch
Are there
this real
little
quick.
Are there little yellow buses of Illuvitards that show up?
That's
with a
the answer to that
ramp?
question is yes. Yes,
That's
the
bad.
answer is yes.
We need a palate cleanser. Here's what they look like. Check it out. And there it is. Let's start out with Cardano games. Since Nick is here, and he is maybe the most bullish on Cardano of any person I've ever seen on planet Earth. Did you know that video games are on Cardano? I did a ton of research on this, and I wanted to share with everyone just a couple examples of some Cardano games, and then I want to kick it over to Nick, who's the most knowledgeable about Cardano of any human on Earth I'm aware of. Did you know there's this game called Cornucopias, which is this sort of immersive world game on Cardano? It's this sort of AA quality sort of game where you go out in the open world, sort of got this Wild Westy sort of feel with play to earn and build to earn. And they're kind of going with that metaverse angle, which is interesting. And there's also a card game being built on Cardano called Dracards, which has its own original IP and some kind of cool looking cards. It's sort of a AA sort of looking trading card game. I thought this was interesting to dive into this world of Cardano. It seems like it's very, very early on Cardano gaming because smart contracts more or less just recently became available in the capacity that developers could start maybe dreaming of making games in the Cardano gaming ecosystem. So the question goes to you, Nick. What are your thoughts on the Cardano gaming ecosystem? Are the games good or bad? And is gaming even critical at all to Cardano's success?
It's probably not right now critical. It's probably not even very interesting. I think evidenced by that there's only a few games that are, even titles that are building. You know, if you don't have the infrastructure to build, you know, then you're like, well, soon, any minute, we're going to be able to. And developers are trying to develop, right? They're trying to, and game builders are trying to design and think, you know, storytellers want to tell stories. And I just don't think it's enough to, you know, Cardano is a lot of things. And what I think the game space will look like, I don't think we know. I don't think, and also Cardano is not about building the game space of the future. They're just about building a rail of infrastructure where anybody can come, and if it fits within the kind of the quality, you know, if you're a developer and you go, ooh, you know, I need to run transactions at a certain speed, I need to have this kind of density, you know, all of these kind of software concerns, then it might make sense that you would go, okay, let's build into Cardano. But any really good quality game, I think, in the future is probably going to run on a bunch of different infrastructure rails so that it's cross-chain. You know, you could say multi-currency, but it's really not about the currency. It's just about where are you going to have the best gaming experience and who builds those rails. Cardano is less about that and more about just building the rails so that, like, in Africa, you could have digital identity and medical recording and digital on-chain voting and, you know, on-chain governance of currency and credit scoring and credit availability and free-flowing cash and things like this to build from the ground up a society that has no record keeping. If in that process there's some cool games that roll out, yeah, that's great. But I don't think that the guys, the team at Cardano, Charles Hoskinson, and then going over into the AI space, they're very close with SingularityNet. They're not going, how do we build the gaming infrastructure of the future? They're saying, how do we build the infrastructure for what the world looks like 5 years from now?
That totally makes sense. And, you know, I feel like we're super early on Cardano because the smart contracts are so early, but I know you also noticed we were so early that many of the Cardano games that are available either have like Cardano, the name in the name of the game, or ADA in the name to try to just appeal to that core Cardano army audience. And they appeared to be developed by and appealing to an older audience of 35 to 55-year-olds, which just generally Cardano does skew a little bit older. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Nick. And then I wasn't seeing anything that resembled a AAA Web2 game or that even aspires to become that. So I'm not currently seeing any mainstream potential with Cardano gaming, but it sounds like your impression of Cardano games right now, Nick, is they kind of don't really care, right? That's not the main enchilada. This is just a side dish.
Yeah, they want to create a way for humanity to move forward, to bank all of these unbanked or marginally banked people, and to protect, you know, the integrity of data in the future in a semi-permissioned or mostly decentralized, unpermissioned way, right? Like you should control your data, you should control your history, you should control your value units, whatever way you want to store those. It should not be someone else telling you, well, we had to close the bank today. Sorry, Africa, you can't buy food because, you know, we don't want a bank run. So you should have control of a lot of these things. You also have a situation where you have people that are incredibly educated, but maybe they, like a neurosurgeon in Africa, well, their school or university burned on fire when some warlord didn't get his way. So now he's driving an Uber in New York City, which is an incredible waste of intellect, right? Not that Uber drivers aren't awesome, but maybe people that do brain surgery should be doing brain surgery instead of, you know, going to 32nd Street and turning left. And so in a situation like that, you have to build those rails. Ethereum was the first set of rails, so it makes sense that everybody goes in that direction. You launched a token in the past, you went to Ethereum. You launched anything in the past, NFTs, you used Ethereum because, well, there was no other choice. And then when other companies rushed to get a choice out there, Solana, you see what happens. It's a dumpster fire.
Oh, we're going to get to Solana next. Here, hit pause on your Solana really quick.
But
Volkin, yeah, go ahead.
But just to summarize, when you're looking at the team of Cardano, they are a peer-reviewed academics first type system where they go slow and they go steady and they implement very good, very clean, very elegant, battle-tested software. And if it's not ready, they don't launch. They're not a move fast and break stuff type of organization. So what you get is slower, more methodical, but very clean, elegant software. And I think that's the infrastructure proposition they're making. And for gaming developers, that might not be the place. But in the future, all of these layer ones will probably be the place.
Interesting. Volkin and TSG, do you have any opinions on Cardano gaming? I know it's like primordial goo early over there. Or are you just kind of not even on your radar right now because it's too early?
Too early for me. It's and I don't think it's necessarily like this kind of summarizes the whole talk in general, but it's like I don't think it's necessarily about the chain. It's just about the game. If you got a good game that works, obviously the chain, the infrastructure is going to help, but it's about the game. And you know, there's nothing that I'm seeing on Cardano that I'm like hanging for, essentially.
Makes sense. TSG, you were nodding your head. Was that generally your position as well on Cardano?
Yeah. Well, like my current state of my current opinion on Cardano is, I'm not even like honestly looking at it, but I'm not against it either. Just right now in the current state, there's nothing really in the gaming space that makes me want to spend a lot of time. But I think in the future, and again, like somewhat like what I'm going to do what Volkin kind of did and summarize my thoughts pretty much on the discussion. But I believe that like in the future, the thing is, there's two things that we're going to be looking at, right? And that I think are going to be super important. And it's one, the games, but I think more important than the games is actually the accessibility of access. Because you could have like an amazing game, but if consumers have to jump through mad amounts of hoops to get onto that game, chances are they're just not going to play the game. But if you have a really bad game, but it's very, very easy for you just to try it out, you're probably going to get more people to at least try it out. So I think that's where we're kind of going to go in the future. And like in regards to all of the chains, I don't think one chain is going to be better than the other, or like I don't think one chain is going to win. I'll say that. The way I look at the different chains is somewhat like a PlayStation or an Xbox or a Nintendo. You're not going to be like there are very few people in the world that say, I only play Sony PlayStation and I'm not even going to look at the other games. If there's an exclusive on Xbox, most people will have a PlayStation and an Xbox. And I think that's what's going to happen here as well. Once quality games come out in the next 2 to 3, maybe 5 years on Cardano, on Solana, on Ethereum, we'll kind of just choose the different blockchains like we do consoles. So I think that's the way we're going to go forward. And right now with Cardano, I just don't see anything that's really like, if that's the Nintendo, there's no Nintendo games on there that really makes me want to go pick that up just yet. So once the good exclusives come out, I'll pay a bit more attention. But for now, it's still in development, I'd say.
Well, if Cardano is super in development, super early, it's not as important, seems to be the panel to Cardano's success, seems to be the consensus there. Let's talk then about Solana. Solana gaming is a much larger part of the conversation in that ecosystem. And don't worry, Illuvium people, we're getting to Ethereum as well. We're all lining up to talk about how they can potentially work together or not. Solana games, the big boy there is obviously Star Atlas. It's the only game that I could find, and I did hours of research, that actually aspires to be a AAA game in the Solana ecosystem. And Star Atlas, according to their own CEO, Michael Wagner, this one's coming out 2027 to 2029. So we obviously, according to them even, we aren't going to see this game until the end of the decade. The other major game that was on the Solana ecosystem that people were talking about was DeFi Land. And this is like a single A or double A style Farmville game, basically. So Solana, though Solana is a big name as a chain, the only game I could find that actually aspired to maybe potentially be mainstream or become a large game that could attract a lot of gamers was Star Atlas. So I want to kick it over to our content creators first on this one, starting with Volkin. If that's it on Solana, I mean, I know some other games, but they're basically AA or indie style games. Is gaming on Solana even a thing? Does it matter? Is it important to the success of Solana at all? What are your thoughts on that, Volkin?
Well, firstly, I hope no one got hacked yesterday. That's the first thing.
Shots fired.
That was horrible. I still don't, I only just woke up, so I don't know if they found out what happened there. So I jumped on and transferred all mine out. But Solana Gaming, yes, Star Atlas, if they do what they're talking about, I'm wrapped. Sort of in the space, I've sort of transitioned away from looking at what games are saying they're going to do and more just waiting to see what they actually do. Because there's a lot of talk about what games are going to do, but until you actually see it, I'm just not too stressed. When I first jumped into the space, I got excited about a bunch of things. Then, it just doesn't quite happen. So I'm waiting for games to actually launch to see what they do. Now, Solana obviously came in and it was that, that chain where it's like, okay, we got like really quick, really cheap transactions that make it really easy. But the reason I talked at the start about that whole idea of, and I might be stepping in on a future topic, but I just wanted to mention it, about the hack that went on with Solana with some of the wallets, is that I think this is a big issue for gaming in general, because when you're trying to get just gamers who want to play games, and let's face it, gamers, a lot of them won't be looking at hard wallets and stuff like that. They'll be using hot wallets. And
whatever the easy solution is, whatever I can do to quickly get in. Yeah.
On top of that, a lot of them, a lot of the games, not saying Solana specifically, but a lot of the play-to-earn games and a lot of gaming in general is moving to mobile. So a lot of people would then, link their wallets to their mobile. And I believe, as far as I can see from this hack, what the issue was, it was somewhere between linking into iOS that made a vulnerability where they could get keys or something. I don't know exactly how it worked. But when you've got stuff like that that can happen, and the actual just ability to play games and know that you're going to be able to come back into that game and play it and your stuff's going to be there, is a big issue for getting gamers into the space. Because like even myself, I've been here for about a year and a bit, and even I'm like, when I hold stuff in my wallet, if I've got a decent amount of stuff in my wallet, it's like I get nervous just holding it. I'm like, I just want to play games. And like, this is like the feeling that you get. So I think that's a big hurdle we've got to overcome. And like I said, that's why I mentioned the hack that happened on Solana. But back to general Solana, I think when it launched, a lot of games got really excited about that, the speed of transactions and the cheap transaction fees. Because when this really took off was when, ETH, you were paying $100 for gas, and it wasn't going to be viable. Obviously, we got layer twos and stuff like that. But I think that was like the big grab to it. As for the games, I can't stand Farmville games. That's not my style. Star Atlas, like I said, if it does what it's saying it will do, fantastic. I still think, honestly, the only other crypto game that I play pretty much daily at the moment is a bit of a different concept. And I feel like there is room open for different concepts of games to get in that aren't genuine games. And the one like I play every day is Steppin', because, you get digital runners and it actually makes me go out and do exercise every day. And the thing is, it's funny because you got a certain amount of energy to use every day, and I will go out and I will run for that specific amount of time. So it's one of those things where, as a gamer, for me, it's like I have this mental block from playing mobile games that if I have stamina at cap and I've got all my stamina full, it's like something in my brain where it just like, you can't do that. You can't overcap your stamina. Like, and so for me, it's actually forcing me to go out and go on walks and runs because of that gaming side of me where I'm like, I can't let this happen. So I've got to go out. So I'm doing 50 minutes of exercise a day because of that. And I think that type of thing is actually really good for onboarding people into the space, because not only is it just about a game, because with everything else, if the game, goes to zero, which Steppen has dropped a lot, like everything in the last few months. But if everything else, if it goes to zero, you're left with sort of nothing. Whereas this, at least, it's got you into a lifestyle habit. So that's sort of where I'm at with Solana. That's the only game I currently play on Solana. But it's got other value besides just the game. As for actual games, we got to wait and see what they produce.
Got it. Quickly, TSG, what are your thoughts on Solana gaming ecosystem? Obviously, stepping worthy of being an honorable mention, of course, on the list here with Solana, maybe more so than DeFi land. Probably should have put that on there. But TSG, what are your thoughts on Solana gaming ecosystem? Is it viable?
Is it viable? It's definitely viable, like what Volkin kind of said. I want to be transparent. I haven't actually ventured into Solana gaming, so this is kind of just me talking off the cuff. In regards to is it viable, definitely with stepping, we've seen it work, or we've seen the benefits of it, I should say. The thing that I'm worried about with Solana are the outages, because if you're playing there and you've actually got your funds there, you've got a decent amount of capital in there, like the outages is just something that I'd be worried about. Yeah, so yeah, exactly. So that's something that I'm just looking at. Also, I think it's funny that with Cardano, we're looking at it where the games that they're kind of building, like you said, a single A or double A games, and then you've got the complete opposite with Solana with Star Atlas, which isn't even a triple A game. That's like a futuristic game, and it's just like it's so crazy how like there's no kind of all right, this is how we're going to get to just a triple A game yet. It's just we're doing like the simple single A, double A's, and then Solana saying, Star Atlas is saying, yo, let's do this crazy mass triple A game of another level we've never seen before. So I think the gap there is just a lot. So I think it's hard. Yeah, it's hard to see. Again, I want Star Atlas to do what they're saying they're doing. But honestly, just based on like I've said it in multiple discussions previously after the debate, man, we've seen with Cyberpunk was in development for 9 years, and the scope of that was much smaller than Star Atlas. So Star Atlas is like the shining star of Solana, and it just seems, I won't say improbable. It seems very difficult for them to actually achieve the scope that they're putting out. So aligned with what Volkin said before, I'm very much at the point where I don't really want to hear the talk anymore. I don't want to hear the talk anymore, but I'm going to hold off on like getting excited listening to the talks. I actually want to see some action. I want to see some progress, some actual results. That's probably going to be it. And regarding the actual question of is gaming critical for Solana's success? I don't think so. I don't think it's critical for any blockchain success. I think there's way more utility in the world than gaming. I think gaming is a big part to play, but I don't think it's like a critical component. Somewhat like what Nick was saying with Cardano, if they can achieve everything else that they're trying to do, gaming just seems like the cherry on top. But yeah.
Nick, it sounded like you had something spicy to say about Solana. I know that you maybe have some ethical concerns or something like that with Solana.
It's a dumpster fire.
I'll give you a couple minutes. What do you mean by it's a dumpster fire?
Tell us what you really think. Come on.
Yeah, tell us what you really think.
It's a dumpster fire. So Solana, listen, any of these protocols, they're built on having three things, right? Three things that you definitely need. And this is all these games, they're going to be amazing. And we're going to play a variety of them. My personal opinion is that the kind of banner games, it's not going to come from crypto into the real world. It's going to go from the real world backwards, right? You're going to see big titles choosing platforms to run on, choosing protocols to partner with, like a Call of Duty, like a Population One, like whatever. I think it goes that way and back, not from this little tiny little space, illiquid space of crypto into the rest of the world. You will see a couple of, high flyers that people go, oh, that's cool, right? Like maybe Illuvium's the one where people go, oh, that's badass. But mostly you'll see big titles that have hundreds of millions of players, and they'll go, it might make sense for us to pony up with one of these infrastructure plays and have some kind of, use utility and potential adoption in some monetized network, however they decide to ascribe value. But all of these things are built on a protocol, and those protocols are run by humans. And sacrifices are made here and there, like in crypto, to get it right. If you build a protocol, your protocol game theoretically has to have some fundamental things. And without these, it will not work. You have to have consistency, you have to have liveness, and you have to have termination of transactions. And Solana does not have those. They said long ago, we're going to go as fast as we can. We're going to get to market. Why? Because they were pushed by some VCs that had their hands right up their ass. This was a complete VC play with guys that don't have a lot of, good chops in the design. All the good designers were designing 5 years before Solana. These are two dudes that were surfing. They don't have good DNA. They have weak game theory. This isn't, I'm not calling them out. No one has to call them out.
Tell us what you really think, Nick Black.
Well, it's just an obvious fail. It's an obvious, like, how many times does something have to, if your wife's pacemaker or grandma's pacemaker failed 3 out of 7 days every week, how many network outages before you're like, bro, this pacemaker sucks? Well, one, grandma's dead, right? And so Solana first went, we're going to get all the banks because we're so fast. Well, they weren't fast. If you run two computers next to each other, they can do transactions really fast in a cloistered environment. But when you expose them to the realities of the world that we live in, and internets, and attackers, and humans that are gaming these things, and this big network of people that have to support it, and by the way, your developers lie about the token supply, and they steal 12 million tokens and give like 3 million back, and then just say they lost the 12. Listen, man, they stole 9 effing million tokens at $200 a token, and then just told everyone just to move on. So they lie, they cheat, they steal, they have poor game theory, and they can't develop. So at some point you go, they're trying to build a skyscraper on top of toothpicks and explosives. Like, what do you expect?
So it's not going to work out. It's not going to work out for gaming then, you don't think?
It's probably not going to work out for anything. Now on the other side of it, if I was stuck in Solana, I bought in at like $189 because I'm a rube and I listen to these idiots sell me this thing, and this is just from the investment side, I would go, is there anything this network can do? Now, when you have a market like the NFT space, where maybe you don't need tons and tons and tons of real-time transactions, and maybe the uptime and consistency, liveness, termination, maybe those aren't super important because you might be buying pieces of art or the future of NFTs, like paper documents, data, all this kind of stuff. Maybe it would make sense for them to kind of focus their efforts right there. So I think Solana, I'm not a complete hater. I think maybe they have a future in some kind of distributed data, some kind of storage of documents, things like that. But if you have to do something in real time, Solana is not, no bank on earth is going to work with them because they're, 27 outages in, you're like, well, the Bank of Argentina has more uptime and they use like an abacus to do their math, right? So
this is a savage Solana takedown. I was not expecting something this juicy about Solana. This is good.
They're so sketchy, man. And the people that lost their,
what do you think?
The abacus is beating their blockchain.
People got smoked.
What do you think of the chances? What do you think of the chances of them turning it around there? Because you said like there is a possibility for them to kind of pivot into a new kind of thing. What do you think the chances are?
They can absolutely pivot. There's no turning around. They built on bad rails with bad game theory. Their whole consensus mechanism, it just doesn't fly. So they would have to hit the restart. You know what they should do? They should just buy the other protocol layers. Solana should take their entire treasury and they should buy Cardano, Polkadot, Cosmos. They should buy Near. They should buy Ethereum. They should buy Matic. And they should just dissolve their company into those companies. They should run on top of Optimism. They should leverage collateral with Harmony One. And then, woo-woo, Solana's fixed by existing no more.
Wow. That was so much better than I'm not even going to say what I think about Solana. Mic drop there from Nick on Solana. Let's move on to Ethereum games then. So in stark contrast to my research with Cardano games and Solana games, Cardano almost had nothing. I mean, it had a few games. Solana had more, some, larger, let's say, maybe AA, in some cases, quadruple A games, let's say, with Solana, with Star Atlas. Ethereum, though, it was actually difficult for me to narrow down my list of games to ones that I could show everybody here because there's so many bigger games, which is encouraging, obviously, for the Ethereum ecosystem, which is significantly larger. Obviously, you know about Sandbox, let's say maybe a Minecraft equivalent, let's say, Gods Unchained, a Hearthstone equivalent, Illuvium, a Teamfight Tactics equivalent, if we're going to simplify it. And honorable mentions go out to Axie Infinity, Decentraland, Gala Games, you name it. There's so many titles on Ethereum. This ecosystem is so much larger and developed right now. Obviously, though, it is older and it has been around the block for much longer. And ERC20 obviously has played a big role, let's say. And when developers are looking at where do I want to deploy my money, which network do I want to be on, they're thinking, well, I want to be on the biggest network, obviously, with the most users. And so Ethereum has kind of been winning because it is the biggest because it is the biggest. And then with layer 2 solutions coming along the way and dropping gas fees down to 0, if you're able to get on layer 2, that's been solving some of the transaction issues. So time to go around the table, and I'll go to Volkin first. The Ethereum gaming ecosystem is more developed right now, but do you think it will stay number one? And do you think it matters if it stays number one? Volkin.
Well, yeah, I think like at the moment, it's hard to know what's going to happen in the future. Like the space acts so quick, but I just think, just like you said, it's the biggest because it's the biggest, and that will keep attracting more people to it because it is the biggest, and that's pretty much it. And if one person goes there, kind of like what was talked about earlier about how mainstream games putting crypto in will bring people to crypto. I think it's a bit more extended than that, where we need good crypto games to show mainstream games how to do it before they can bring it in and do it tastefully. Because I've seen more on the mobile side, but like I know you and me, Andrew, spoke about this with some games coming from mobile from those developers, and they just have disgusting tokenomics and models that just can't work. And I think that's the biggest problem at the moment, is obviously with Axie, where the economic model was always going to 0. So when you've got stuff like that, where it's like,
so just some context on that, so everybody understands, the economic model for Axie was always going to 0 because their token could be infinitely printed, which debased the in-game currency. So that's what you mean. It was always going to 0, similar to fiat currency and any other currency that can be printed. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's exactly it. So, for me personally, like if a game has infinite printed tokens with nothing else to support that, it's just sort of like, that's where I see it going. Also, I don't like pre-sale NFTs because I've played it through a lot of games, like crypto games, just sort of mobile style games that they make crypto versions of. And if you have pre-sale NFTs, you always get this thing where the day of launch or the day before launch, the prices of these pre-sale NFTs, because you need them to play the game, goes through the roof. Then as soon as the game launches, those people get their head start. They can dump some stuff on other people. And the strategy for me when I was playing through all these games was dump quick because it's going to go down. And that's what happens, because once you get to your peak level of players, because everything got so inflated from the early people trying to get the first stuff so that they could earn in these games, it all just comes collapsing down because now you have less people coming in buying it. So now you're trying to sell things cheaper, and supply and demand basically is just what happens. So that's the biggest issue for me in that sense. But on Ethereum, like I said, Axie sort of gave it was great because it gave exposure, but then on the flip side, when it all comes crumbling down, then it gives very negative exposure to the mainstream. So I definitely think, to answer the question, I think Ethereum will probably at this stage be the place where most games go to because it is the biggest, most known. Also, when you're the biggest, you probably have the most development for these types of things. I'm not great on that sort of back end type stuff, but that's just the way I view it. I think that will happen. But yeah, I think until we get to get more in the space, I think we just need some good examples to, promote that it can be done well.
Makes sense. TSG, what are your thoughts here? Is Ethereum, I want to frame this a little bit differently for you. Yeah. Obviously, we know Ethereum is the biggest, and being big is good in indie industry, sure. But is gaming critical to Ethereum's success, given all the other utility that Ethereum can offer, especially with, obviously, stable coins and all the other different applications ETH brings to the table? Seems to kind of lead innovation sometimes because it's big. Yeah. What are your thoughts on how critical gaming is to Ethereum's success?
Yeah. Okay. So again, I'll repeat myself again. I don't think for any chain that gaming is critical for their success, right? Like you kind of mentioned already, there's the DeFi stuff that's going on. We have the NFT thing that's going on. And I think currently the whole NFT craze is just on the art side of things. once we start actually implementing different uses for NFTs, actual like club tokens, once we start using it for gym memberships, restaurant memberships, golf memberships, plane tickets, things like that. Like once we use the actual technology, I think that's just going to be the way it is. And I think, again, we already kind of mentioned that because Ethereum is the biggest, one, it's the way I look at it is, I use this analogy quite a bit, but I think it's like, I call it the Tesla effect, right? Where with EVs, electric vehicles right now, Tesla's so far ahead that like no one else can really truly catch up. And that's not to say that it won't happen eventually. Like we've seen what's happened with Nokia, things like that. So you can lose your top spot, but I think Ethereum is so far ahead right now. And because it's so far ahead, all the development is going towards them. I think that's just, they're going to hold that top spot for a while. Also, second, I'm going to touch back on what Nick mentioned as well. I actually agree with him. I don't think all of these like crypto games are the things that's going to bring gamers into the blockchain and Web3 gaming. I don't think that's what's going to happen. What I think is going to happen, and this is what I see going on right now, I think Axie did a really, really great thing. I think not that they're a great project, not that anything like that. Obviously, we know they were destined to fail, but they showed the possibility, the potential of what Web3 gaming can do, what blockchain gaming can do.
You mean the adoption potential, the fact that something could go viral, it could take off, it could have a Pokemon Go style moment where everybody's talking about it. Is that what you mean?
Correct. And also like that and the benefits, like there were benefits for the players as well. So the adoption and the benefit side. So I think that was a big thing. I think the next step that's going to happen is a game, and I am going to just say this because I can't be completely objective. I think a game like Illuvium, now with the legacy gamers and legacy gaming studios have seen the potential for adoption and the benefits, the next thing now is we need an actual AAA game to make it sustainable. We've got the potential out the way. Now, once we get that actual quality of gameplay that matches what we're used to now, that's when we're actually going to see like, all right, like the guys like Minecraft, you talked about Sandbox. Minecraft is saying that they're against NFTs. I think once we actually get like a good AAA game out there and it's actually starting to garner some attention and not die out like Axie did, I think that's when like you say, the Call of Duties and other things like that are going to switch on and be like, all right, we actually need to pay this some attention instead of just fighting it. So that's the way I see it going. I think Axie did amazing with garnering that original attention on the potential. And I think what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to find one or two, maybe like a handful, I'll say a handful of AAA games of like the utmost quality to actually get the legacy gaming studios to realize, yo, this is actually where we're going to go now. This is where we have to go now. Otherwise, we're just going to miss out. So I think that's what's going to happen. And then it's not just going to be a whole bunch of new games popping up and taking over the world. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a handful for sure.
Got it. Nick, I know you think Solana's a dumpster fire. Let's put that aside. Just strictly in terms of gaming and the importance of something like gaming for the adoption of Ethereum, do you think it's that critical to the adoption of Ethereum? Or do you see Ethereum as this much larger beast that has so many more other applications, and maybe it's just one gem in the Infinity Gauntlet, not the most important one? What's your take on that?
It's one of many, right? Like, you know, what TSG was talking about with, Minecraft saying no NFTs. No. That's not exactly what they said. They said, not your NFTs. We'll do something when we want to, but we're not going to let someone else reap the benefits, right? So if they do something, they're going to launch it. It will probably sit on top of Polygon because Matic seems to be the choice of everybody, which that should also be a big alarm to those of you that have not been following Matic, that maybe it's worth looking at again. And Matic is a layer 2 that's starting to look a lot more like a layer 1. They partner with Matic. Matic's partnered. They're in the Disney Accelerator program. They partner with Facebook. They're going to be running underneath transactions for Instagram as Instagram tries to usurp TikTok and all this kind of stuff. Wax is very interesting too. But if you look at who's doing the deals with the major kind of brand names, it's probably in the background, it's probably Algorand at the banking level. It's Ethereum in the public facing. Like when we look at projects, if you're going to launch something, what's the easiest? Probably Ethereum. Well, a few months ago, maybe. Now it's probably a handful. And what are the brand names leaning on? They're leaning on Matic. So there's a good chance that any of these big titles is going to be cross-platform, cross-chain, very easily accessible. They won't want to, like if you're Call of Duty and you want to build out a whole network of in-game asset transfers and NFTs and all this kind of stuff, you probably don't want to alienate anyone. So you're going to run on some network that has some interchain operability, but you're not going to do it yet because those haven't worked yet. You're going to watch and you're going to wait, and then you're going to monetize it for you. You're not going to go make 6 dudes in a closet that work at Polkadot rich when you can launch on any of these rails or all of them at the same time. They're like, there's no reason that a Minecraft couldn't do a launch that is some kind of omnibus launch on Matic, on Ethereum, on Cardano, on Algorand, on Near, and they could just go for everyone.
Similar to what was spoken about earlier. If you have a AAA game, you're going to launch it on PlayStation, on Xbox, on PC. You're going to try to do a mobile port. You're going to do every distribution channel in every country possible to maximize revenue. So it only makes sense in this case, right?
So I think the future is multi-chain. As far as Ethereum specifically, they have to scale. And it's not so clear that they're going to get that done. This merge that's coming is not them scaling. It's a step towards Ethereum 2, but it's the merge followed by, what is it? The surge, the verge, the purge, and the splurge. I'm not kidding. Like, sounds like
everybody follow that? That's good marketing.
These are all these iterative upgrades so that maybe in 2025 we have Ethereum 2. The problem is these other protocols, Near and Algorand and Cosmos and Cardano and go down the list, and Matic and some of these layer 2s like Optimism and things like that are making life easier. And they're not just scaling Ethereum, they're scaling a multitude of other protocols. If you're a designer right now, you're not going to wait and go, well, I hope Vitalik and his team get it together by 2025. You're just going to say, well, what can we do right now? Well, right now we can launch on these other 18 protocols. So let's do that.
That totally makes sense. And just my quick 2 cents here on Ethereum. I hinted at it a little bit earlier, but for me, the impact when it comes to a particular blockchain or a particular technology or platform like Ethereum, do you have games that have mass appeal and that could potentially bring in hundreds of millions of players? And so far, I think Ethereum is the only option right now that even is attempting to do that with Sandbox, Gods Unchained, Illuvium, and a number of other titles. And the ones that are adopting those layer 2 solutions like Nick is talking about to go gas less are the ones that actually even have a chance at all of doing mainstream adoption, because people dropping even any meaningful amount of money in a transaction fee, having any transaction fee at all, will be completely unacceptable to a mainstream gamer. And so layer 2s are basically mandatory on Ethereum if we're ever going to be viable there. At the interoperability between these, we've been talking about if you're a game developer, game publisher of the future, you want to distribute multi-chain. You're not thinking I want to have this necessarily on all these consoles, PC, mobile. Of course, you're thinking about that. You have to think about that, the hardware, and you have to think about the software distribution as well, and how you handle your assets. That is a new, fascinating concept. And so, obviously, big names in this space include folks like Polkadot, multi-chain vision. They kind of own that as sort of the brand, if you will, of interoperability. And Illuvium, for example, is partnered with Chainlink, who has, industry standard Oracle technology to help with interoperability and to help connect the dots on the blockchain. And so I want to kick this over to Nick first. This interoperable future, do you think that it's possible for there to be some sort of, let's say, interoperable metaverse, whatever the hell that means, right? And if so, if not, what are the challenges or what are the opportunities there? We've all seen Ready Player One, right? Where you're seamlessly going through different cities and you seem to be playing different video games at will with different intellectual properties, nilly-willy. You're getting coins in your pocket one minute, you're turning into a robot the next minute. It's just seamlessly interoperable. Let's say that's on one end of the spectrum of Ready Player One. Then currently we're at the other end of the spectrum of almost nothing talks to each other at all yet. So where are we going to end up in that spectrum of fantasy and reality? Nick, let's kick it over to you first.
So I just think it's important to define what I think a metaverse is going to look like because we're approaching that. Look, 30 years ago, we didn't have much in the way of video games except like Pong or whatever. But look where we are now, where you slip on your Oculus or your Hive or your Rift or whatever, and within a few minutes, you check out of reality, and that's your reality, and you don't really question it. So imagine 50 years, 100 years, 200 years from now. So, I mean, I think the games will get better and better and more hyper real and more visceral. And we will be able to enter that world and forget about this world quicker and quicker and quicker. So you say, okay, well, what would a metaverse look like? Well, it's going to be some extension with artificial general intelligence or heavy swarms of AI underneath AR, VR, and XR, right? Augmented reality, artificial reality, kind of a virtual reality scenario, and then extended reality. And so whatever that looks like, which we don't know, but we know what it might look like. It might look like a place where you can't determine that you're there. And then, of course, all sorts of questions arise, like, are we already there, right? But that's a Elon Musk type thing. But what I would say is, as an investor, I'm buying the underlying infrastructure of anybody that could be underneath that. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm just telling you how I got effing rich. And so the way I did it was I just said, what do I think crypto is going to look like for the next 3 or 4 years? I want to buy all of the rails. I want to do what all those old, rich, fat white dudes did when America started. They just bought all the streets. They bought the railways. They bought the highways even before they were highways. And they just let everyone else build on top. And so that's kind of the way I look at the metaverse. I just want to be a part of the infrastructure, which means the whole basket. So I want exposure to Ethereum and Cardano and Singularity Net. And I want exposure to any of the competent AI players. I want exposure to Apple, and I want Facebook, even Meta. Everybody's like, oh, Mark Zuckerberg's stupid. Bro, Mark Zuckerberg is not stupid, right? Like,
I agree with you. You might not like him, but he's very savvy, and he understands where the future is. I mean, there's a reason why he's got 10,000 people right now working full-time on Oculus. We'll talk about VR in a bit, Oculus technology, and why he rebranded and repositioned his entire company toward Metaverse. He's not dumb. He sees the future like you're talking about. And you may hate his guts, but he is now leading the way in the Web 2 world toward Web 3. And it was a gangster move, and I totally agree with this move. Whether people in this space like the fact that Facebook's getting involved, doesn't matter. It's a good business move.
It's going to come from the brands. I think the big brands are going to work their way in. We're already going to have next year, end of next year, I think is the tentative release date for the Apple, the glasses. We've got the Cambria, which for those of you that are on the Oculus, that's the Quest 2 Pro, which is it's a much more, I don't want to get into the whole thing, but the Cambria is going to be kind of the pro dev kit, with pancake lenses and all this kind of stuff it's like an upgraded super badass Oculus 2. Then there is another Oculus coming, but I think that's 2024. Whereas the Cambria is this year. Like that's here in a couple months. And then you have Microsoft's kind of flop of a device. We'll see, but you've got all of these big, Google's going to take another attempt after they failed with the glasses, but all of these big brand companies are going to come out with their own version of how you should experience the meta environment and as that takes shape. And again, those brands, the games, they're not going to say, oh, only this one or only that one. You will have games that are bound to those brands because of some kind of money deal. But my guess is as this interoperability and as like you see already some games that are available on Steam and other platforms, they'll just escape. And they'll escape because the developers don't want the games to be landlocked, or clever developers and engineers will go, screw you, I'll just copy and paste and we'll just spin up another version of the game over here on this network. All of these things that have value, I think will start to kind of ooze into all of your or our metaverse experiences. That's kind of where my head's at.
That makes sense. And just to clarify, people that are wondering, like, what is Illuvium doing with interoperability? Obviously, all of the like Illuvial NFTs and your Illuvitar and land will be interoperable between Illuvium games, which might not sound as remarkable to hardcores in this space, but that is actually remarkable compared to Web 2 games, where if you have let's say a gun in the old Call of Duty game, you don't get that gun in the new Call of Duty game. You don't get to use it. So here in the short term, at least the very short term, I know that's baby steps interoperability, but being in the short term, having interoperability amongst your own games in your own franchise, that's happening short term, which to me is very, very exciting. And that on its own is a huge upgrade. I know that's only a baby step from that end of the spectrum toward Ready Player One, but it is a step. And I'm glad Illuvium's taking that step. What are your thoughts, TSG, on interoperability? Do we even need interoperability between Cardano, Solana, Ethereum, Hive, whatever in the future? And if so, what does that look like to you?
The answer to that question, yes, we do need that. But before I go into that, I do want to say one thing about the whole Metaverse Mark Zuckerberg thing. As much as people might not like him, there's actually going to be a huge benefit to him pulling off what he's trying to do with a centralized metaverse. The same way that, like, for example, a lot of people didn't actually like or were super against iPhones or smartphones back in the day. And they're like, nah, we don't need that. I prefer the buttons. And once they got into the technology of the smartphone and they got educated with the technology, now those same people are switching up from the iPhone to Samsung, Huawei, all these other different brands. So I think the same thing's going to happen with Metaverse, whereas we're always going to need a world where there is some centralization and some centralized systems and some decentralized systems. So I think a lot of people, it's the centralized version of the Metaverse is going to onboard a lot of people. And once they get educated to the technology, they understand the benefits of it, they'll start to realize and say, oh man, the iPhone isn't the best smartphone. I can do a lot more than Android. And it's the same thing. They'll look at the Metaverse and say, yo, look, this is cool. I got a lot out of it. I'm used to this now, but now let me see what's on the other side. So I do want to mention that with everyone hating Zuckerberg, I think there's going to be a lot of benefits to what he's doing as well. And also, you don't need to play in that metaverse if you don't want to, but you can still appreciate what it's going to do for the entire space. Regarding the actual interoperability, I always struggle with that word. I agree with what you're saying, Andrew. I think the way that Illuvium is doing it, I think is the right way to go about it, because it's the same thing I mentioned before with Cardano and Star Atlas, where it's just like we're trying to jump from like a double A single A to the most insane AAA, and it's the same thing where like we have no interoperability right now, and we want to go to Ready Player One. Like that's just logically, it's just objectively insane. That's just not going to happen. There's no like infrastructure to make that happen. So what's the best thing we can do? What Illuvium's doing? Create your universe and make sure your IP is interoperable with everything in that IP. That's the first step. Once you can see that and the proof of concept is there, then you can start to expand. And for us to expand in that way first, I think what we're going to do is we're going to work on that interoperability between IPs. Once we see that work, we're going to go interoperability between in a single blockchain, and then we go multi-chain and things like that. So for me, I'm all for taking baby steps. I think that's the way we're going to make progress. I think that's the progression that I'm kind of expecting to see. IP, single blockchain, multi-chain, and then we reach Ready Player One. But I think that Ready Player One world that we're looking at, I'm honestly thinking 10 to 15 years at least. That's going to be a while.
Here's the correct pronunciation from the audience. Thank you. It's interoperability. Perfect.
That's what I thought it was. Yeah, that's what
I will study that one.
Me too. Thank you so much, audience, for that one. Volkin, interoperability. What do you see being the short term, midterm, and long term here? Short term, we know Illuvium's doing interoperability amongst its own games. Let's talk about the medium term. Maybe what could we see in the somewhat foreseeable future here before we get to Ready Player One, in your opinion? And how exciting is that? And what sort of impact do you think that will have on the gaming industry?
Yeah, so the midterm is an interesting one for me because it depends how long we're talking, and it also depends where development comes. So, like TSG said, we don't even have the games that want to, like, I don't think we really have any games that are fully launched at the moment that would be even something you'd have in a metaverse. But the way I see it going midterm would be more of a central hub with quote unquote different doors you go through to go into the Illuvium style, where you've got like Illuvium interoperability in between Illuvium games. So you can go through that door into the Illuvium ecosystem and play those ones, or you can go through that door and go into the Star Atlas. and play in that ecosystem or whatever game you want. I think that's like where the midterm gets. When you look at Ready Player One, where everything is genuinely fused together, I think that's like I don't know, that's way beyond 10 to 15 years in my mind. I just don't know how you get to that point that quick. But yeah, midterm, I think all these different IPs make their own interoperability, and then where you have like a central hub where you can explore through all of them from a seamless. So like you know, if we get into the VR type scene, and it's like, okay, even it doesn't even have to be VR. It can be on your screen, but you're like a central hub where that's where you're like. I think of WoW terms, like I think of playing WoW and you're chilling out in Orgrimmar because who plays Alliance? So everyone plays Horde. You're chilling out in Orgrimmar, and you know you're just chilling with everyone, and then you're going to go through portals to go to play whatever you want to play, and that's sort of the thing I see. So in terms of what we already have, it'd be sort of like a basic Decentraland type thing where it's like that's your hub, and then you go through a portal, and now you're in Illuvium. And that's sort of like the midterm thing, if that's as midterm as we're looking, that I can sort of see.
Some sort of interface, whatever form it takes, that can get you between games. I mean, the thing is, we have interfaces like that already in Web 2. Things like Steam are interfaces like that, where you can go between games. And then IMX is building out, obviously, their NFT marketplace. They're basically the Steam of Web 3. But that's an entire experience inside of a rectangle, like you guys are watching us in right now. So taking it to the next level, or being like what people maybe envision the metaverse would be like, would be something that would be more of a 3D experience, if you will. I think that's what people think in their minds. But I wonder, is that whole 3D metaverse idea just sort of like flying cars in our minds? Like flying cars is the future, people thought for like 100 years. After cars were invented. But it turns out flying cars are actually not very practical, and they're not actually the best and easiest way to transport anywhere. Have you ever listened to a drone before? It goes, it's unbelievably loud. That times 100 is a flying car. I live next to an airport. You do not want flying cars. So I wonder how much of that is just kind of like this dream that we sort of have in our collective culture versus something that would actually be good and help us navigate around the metaverse. I wonder if 2D is actually better for a while. But TSG, you had a question you wanted to bring up to the group.
Yeah. Because obviously I respect all of your minds, right? So the question I wanted to ask is actually just pretty much what you said, kind of just asking the guys. So one, the whole Ready Player One thing, do you think we will actually get there? Do you think it's going to be good? And if you just had to throw out a random number, like I'm actually curious, if you guys had to say, like I'm going to say 15 to 20 years, if you guys could just, based on what you guys are looking at now, just a random number, what are you guys expecting? Do we reach that? When do we reach that? Is it even possible?
Nick, I want to know your question. Nick has an answer.
Nick, we go around.
Go, Nick.
No, that's my answer.
5 years.
Yeah, because look, these things are pretty badass, right? Would you say that NASA was pretty badass like in 2010? NASA was doing some cool stuff, satellites, nuclear weapons, like all this kind of cool stuff, looking at the early parts of the universe, 13.7 billion, light years away. And this phone is more powerful than NASA 10 years ago. than all of NASA. Like this is more powerful than all of NASA.
So you're saying the acceleration of technology and innovation is so powerful, so
fast.
We shouldn't also underestimate ourselves.
In software, there's the joke, right? Like I overestimate what I can do in a year, but I underestimate what I can do in 3. Because the whole world is developing, and you don't know. Did you ever watch the show House, where it's like the creepy doctor, and he would have an idea that would solve some disease because he saw some girl drop like a glass of water, and he'd be like, it's where the water hits the tile. It's the bleach or whatever. And so you don't know those like aha moments. You don't have those it's the bleach moments, but the whole world is having those moments as they develop. And so something on a Tuesday can look, a problem that you struggle with for 43 years while you got your PhD is solved on Thursday when some rube drops the software drops the water and goes, oh, maybe it's the bleach. And you go, Jesus. And so software can go really, really fast. And then it opens the doors for all of these things that you didn't think were possible, which then makes everything scale really fast. So predicting scaling is semi-impossible. We just know that about every 10 years, or now it's less, we start doubling, like not logarithmically doubling, so squaring our potential. And what is the square of where we're at right now in gaming? Effing awesome.
Dude, I love it so much. Like, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. I'm always the contrarian, and I always want to set realistic expectations for myself, even because I don't want to get my hopes up that the dream is possible in a shorter term. If headed toward the Ready Player One interoperability thing is available in 5 years, that sounds cool. Maybe the technology might start to be available, but then having developers develop upon that technology and then implement it, it takes another 5, 10, or 15 years.
Because
so
you're assuming,
yeah.
Andrew, you're assuming those developers are human.
Right. Okay. Well, then we're short on time right now. We only have 10 minutes left. So let's just go. This TSG just took us all the way there. Let's go straight to those really far-looking topics then. The VR, the AR, the AI, these sort of technologies that, are sort of these flying car style technologies where we can see a version of that today that's clearly not the one, but we can imagine a version of that in the future that could be integrated into our lives. And let me give it to Volkin really quick to give his thoughts on these sorts of technologies. Then I know, Nick, you got some kind of crazy AI rant we've got to hear. So Volkin, what are your thoughts on these emerging technologies, let's call them, a VR, AR? People always throw these out as buzzwords, right? Of like, we're cool, we're metaverse, AR, VR, cool, got investor money. So what are your thoughts on how realistic that is and how much of an impact that will have on gaming?
Okay, I'll leave the VR for Nick because I know he's super up for that. I'll talk a bit about AR. The augmented reality is one that I'm actually a little bit more excited for augmented reality than complete virtual reality because I like the idea of it being integrated into my world. Perfect example of the kind of things, just because I'm an Omega nerd and this is what I like. I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And if anyone watched the Yu-Gi-Oh! Show as a kid and stuff like that, you put your card down and then it gets projected in the world and then they battle. Like, that's the kind of stuff I want to see from augmented reality, along with, obviously Pokemon Go even started it, but like Pokemon Go was a massive craze. I still play it with my son, and like when it first launched, it was like, oh, this augmented reality is cool. You can see them in the world, but it's really impractical. It's quite useless. If you can put some glasses on and be walking around and actually see things in your world that interact, at least they don't clip through the ground and stuff like that. If they make it sort of smooth, I think that's going to be like amazing. And I don't it's funny. I don't think it's far off in that we get steps towards it being better and new implementations of it. But I almost think that augmented reality could be harder to get to the final version of than virtual reality, just because of once you start trying to make things integrate properly into the real world, I feel like there's a lot more obstacles. But, that's not my specialty. But yeah, I'm excited for all of it. But augmented reality is probably the one that I'm most excited for over virtual reality.
Quickly, TSG, what's your take on virtual reality, augmented reality, AR, these emerging technologies? Real, fake, awesome, not really? What do you think?
It's all fake. No. It's all real. It's awesome. I won't take too much time. I'll leave it to Nick because I know he's got a lot to say. For me, I'm actually gonna pretty much follow exactly what Volkin said. VR, I still think actual integration. That's why I want to hear what Nick says. But my uneducated opinion on this, I'll be straight, is about, again, 10 to 15 years before we really see it in everyday life and people are really spending 5-6 hours in virtual reality like that. The thing I'm more excited for is actually the AR, because I know, like, in previous interviews with Zuckerberg just a few months ago, he's saying that they're working on the glasses and the glasses are looking at coming out. They're looking at it within 5 years. So I think once we get proper implementation of AR, I think that's going to open us up for quite a while. And just the opportunities with AR, I think that's going to be exciting. And that's going to be, it's not going to be like, we're not going to jump straight. Again, for me, it's always steps. We're not going to jump straight from, we view the world with our eyes, like visually. So to put virtual reality and kind of live there, that's a big jump from what's real to us. But having augmented reality glasses on, that's a step, right? It's the same way that we first had our phone, and then we decided to wear the Apple Watch. And then we're putting like the earpods. Like we kind of had to take steps to integrate it into our lives. So it's the same way. I think augmented reality glasses are going to be the next step. That's what I'm really looking forward to. And then virtual reality, I think 10 to 15 years before we really live in that space. But yeah, Nick, educate us all,
Nick,
my man.
you have 4 minutes. You have 4 minutes to cover this topic. Then you guys need to shill your stuff, and we got to end this broadcast. Nick, go.
So
Emerging technologies.
15 years ago, there was no smartphone. So just keep that in mind about how much you leverage these devices. They didn't even exist. So look how far we've come. Then I would say, if you look at what's happening in the AI space and artificial intelligence space, as you start introducing swarms of AI, software development will be done by swarms of AI or generally intelligent agents. So human coders will only need to essentially upload their technical skill and the history of their code and their work. And at that point, like, you already have AI writing movies, you have AI doing a lot of really cool things that you would probably be quite haunted that they're doing. So I'm long Skynet. And the reason is because you will start replacing more and more humans with clever software, with artificially intelligent software as it moves to generally intelligent software. If you don't do something so unique that you can't even explain it, you will be replaced by intelligent software or swarms of AI agents, whether it's deep neural nets, something as simple as like swarms of chat bots that recreate your kind of common colloquial, speaking patterns and language and linguistics and things like that, or whether it's something as talented as like software design or the legal system or anything you can think of that you can describe. A robot will do it better 24 hours a day, and it will never sleep and complain and have maternity leave and all these kind of things and get mad and go walk out and whatever. So the reality is that all of these problems that we have, these are human problems, and software solves human problems, and software will solve software problems. And AI is coming anyway. Like Modern said, it's terrifying. Well, look, do you want it to be ushered in by the people at a weapons design company or people like at Cardano and SingularityNet that track like whale patterns in the water and like butterflies? Like, do you want a kind, benevolent AI?
I'll take butterflies over nukes with AI.
Do you want like the kind, benevolent kind, or like the kind that zipped that terrorist on his porch the other day with a Hellfire razor blade missile? Like, who do you want to usher in AI? Because it's coming anyway. So you're going to have to pony up with somebody because this is happening. And so since it's happening, it's not like, well, what if? There's no, that's over with. There's no what if. It is happening. And since it's happening, you might want to start, I think it's probably important for people to do a little research and find out, like, who do you want to be in bed with? Like, who do you want to usher in a kind, benevolent, hopefully abundant kind of artificial intelligence and general intelligence that makes humanity better and brings us closer together rather than, T-1000s of Skynet. Either way, I'm long Skynet, right? Like, just to be safe.
I like it.
That needs to be a whole episode on itself, Andrew, because you could go forever on that. That's a good topic.
Yeah. It's such a good topic. That's why I wanted to bring up all these macro topics on this one. We're going to have all three of you guys back. You know what's interesting? I was having drinks with Grant, one of our co-founders, and he was telling me something very similar to what you were saying, Nick, about AI and game development and production. And in his mind, if the AI technology evolves as quickly as we think, it'll be the same thing for like people making like the Illuvium universe and all of our assets and our Illuvials and all the creative. As the creative person, you're just inputting your creative vision, if you will, into this AI interface. And then the AI just literally goes and makes all the assets for you. It does all the art. It does like 90% of the job. And then as the human, you're like the 10% on the front end to provide the input, or you're like the 5% on the front end to give the input. And then you're the 5% on the back end to make sure it's all put together correctly, because the AI won't be perfect at doing that. But the 90% in the middle, the AI did all that work for you. And that is, it really opened up my mind to hear him talking about that in terms of game development. I'm excited about that because that can mean more expansive game worlds, like the impossibly infinite game world that's not just procedurally generated, but maybe is infinitely creative. All these wild ideas we can't even imagine are possible because of that. We have 1 minute left for you guys to shill your stuff. Volkin, what do you want to shill today, my friend?
Nothing, dude. I'm good. If you want to find me, you can find me. Search the name and you're good. That's it.
TSG, your shill.
Yeah, Twitter, TSG __ 7. My YouTube, do your thing. Appreciate you having us on, Andrew.
You got it. Nick, I know people can find you live all the time. Where can they find you live?
So we do shows every single day on moneymorninglive.com. And then, yeah, hit me up on the Twitter spaces or just the Twitters in general, Nicholas Black 60.
That's it. That was our first return episode of IlluviTalks video style. You guys were a fantastic panel. I love this discussion. We are definitely going to continue to do the show. Thank you for joining me. Every single week at this exact time, in this exact place, we'll be doing IlluviTalks with new guests. I'll be getting these guys back on. I'm long Skynet as well, and we'll see you